How you doing, guys? Eric from worldwasteland.com. Checking back in with you on another glorious Sunday night. Just rocking in the free world. Looks like my sound is working. I think we had like a bit of a false start there with this one tonight. I couldn't get the thing to pop up, so I had to kind of refresh it. So I don't know if it showed you guys that one was about to start and then it didn't work, but we'll see if anybody drops in here. It looks like it's working. I know I can hear myself. I'm on my YouTube and the video seems to be working. My hair is working. Everything's solid. Good deal. What's up, Mr. Landfill? Appreciate you always checking in on time and letting me know things are working. Ah, just another glorious day. Holding some silver, checking out all the things that are destroying in the world around, disintegrating in the world around us. What is the silver and gold price today? Let's go ahead and take a look at that. No, it's still in the 60s. Silver at $68. Holy crap. I didn't know it had cracked up that high. And gold is over 4,400. Oh, man, it's too soon. I don't have it all yet. I was supposed to have thousands and thousands and thousands of ounces by now, which I probably could have had if the price hadn't quadrupled. Um, because like I said, when I bought this just recently, it was like $52 an ounce. Already doubled like basically just this year. Pretty absurd. Pretty absurd. Yeah, what happened was, and now we have the title of this is related to, it's always jumping off. It's jumping off every day. And we've been focusing on the economic and the World War III type stuff because I think that is going to continue unabated, despite what our buddy Bo Polney keeps saying, prophesying that the war is over with. It certainly doesn't look that way. And yeah, Mr. Phil says, if this keeps up, I will pay off the house. Yeah, for sure. I was hoping I could have doubled up before now. People are about to get their teeth stolen. Get their teeth stolen if silver goes up anymore. Do people put silver in teeth? I know they put gold in teeth. I don't know about silver. They put amalgam that's silverish, but not really silver, and they don't use that anymore. But we're also starting to see other things break down. And nobody really, I haven't seen anyone fully kind of figure out exactly what happened with this power outage, if you hadn't heard, in San Francisco. But apparently, like yesterday, up until like midnight or whatever, from like 10 or so in the morning until midnight, a huge portion of San Francisco had a giant power outage. And I don't know exactly what the reason was, but that's pretty extensive, like 10 or 12 hour um, uh, power outage in a major city, especially one as gnarly as San Francisco. Like, I don't know, I haven't looked into exactly what parts of the city lost power, but it was enough that like it was over 100,000 people. So obviously not a huge, it's a big city. It's not a huge, well, it's at 100,000, I think, homes and businesses or something like that. So it might have been a lot more than 100,000 people, but pretty extensive power outage. Not the city you want to be in with the lights off. I've only been over there a couple times, and it's just pretty much as grimy and as gritty as everybody says. The weird thing about San Francisco, like every major city, and Vegas is no exception here, has parts that are really bad crime, if in just certain really specific areas that are not necessarily that big. But the weird thing about San Francisco is it seems to be like evenly distributed throughout the city. You'll just be like wandering down a perfectly normal, very, very expensive area, take one or two turns, and all of a sudden there's literal, shitting in the streets, drug addicts, criminals like splayed out everywhere, complete dilapidation. It's really bizarre, like how like often that happens and how randomly interspersed it kind of seems for someone, at least for someone who doesn't know that area really well. Um, you just be like, really expensive. Oh, wow, this looks dangerous. Whereas most areas, it starts to like kind of get in, you're like, this is starting to get a little worse, and you kind of know the area of like in Vegas, it's like the Northeast. Um, there's pockets here and there, but San Francisco's a gnarly place to have the power go out. But regardless of why the power went out, the types of things that cause it are going to be increasing over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I actually agree with, if you guys haven't seen it, the video that Magic Prepper did today, that he was basically like kind of throwing his hands up, being like, well, guys, it looks like it's just going to keep getting worse until it gets worse. And we probably have the rest of this administration, hopefully, before things get really bad. Now, things could economically get bad at any point, and I think I'll do my New Year's predictions later, but I definitely think they will continue to over the next and accelerate over the next year, especially later in the year, which I thought was going to happen this year, and it kind of everything's kind of just been like muddling along, melt up style. But what we're seeing with gold and silver is getting gnarly. It's not good. You know what I mean? As much as it's great to see things that you own double in value, it doesn't pretend anything good or helpful for the situation, especially coming from someone who, despite having more physical gold and silver than probably 99.99% of humanity, um, it's really not that much, and I don't have a lot of other things that I would like to have set up, like full on homestead type situation to really and almost like a person, not personal army, but a community of that sort that could band together and defend and all this stuff like that you would really want to have squared away if things get as bad as it seems like they could. But yeah, I agree with what he was saying in that video. If you haven't seen it, where he was kind of like pessimistic video, but the general consensus being that he thinks things will probably going to kind of go sideways for a couple years, and that'll probably be the last amount of time that we have to really get our significant preparations in for economic and societal turmoil. But we might not even have that much time when it comes to gold and silver. I mean, we've already lost half our purchasing power with dollars in the past year when it comes to gold and silver. Half. It's pretty brutal. Um, Yes, we have much silver in dental amalgam, often called silver fillings, contained a significant amount of silver, around 35%. All right, mixed with mercury, tin. Yeah, I knew about the mercury and the other trace metals. I didn't know there's that much silver in it. Interesting. But I also know it's not very good for you, mostly because of the mercury. And that's why they, for the most part, have pretty much switched over to ceramic fillings. And it looks better too. You don't have a big like dark spot. But as these things deteriorate, hopefully, like I said, it's this 2 years or so, 3 years that we have, um, we're going to see stuff like this power outage in San Francisco more and more often as institutions and infrastructure and stuff breaks down in um, seemingly probably random and surprising, like unpredictable ways. But since we know it's going to happen, it's predictable. Power outages is one of the things that, as preppers, we should be pretty well planning for in some capacity. We should have some idea of how we're going to deal with that. Um, Everyone should have, like with LED and battery technology these days, it's really simple to have some emergency. And I'll put links in the description for those of you who are watching this later. But I've always been a big proponent of those um, like Weather Ready. Energizer brand makes one called Weather Ready. There's different brands out there, but they're really cheap. Um, Emergency flashlights that you plug into a wall that when the power goes out, they automatically turn on. That's like the first line of defense for me in your house because they're automatic. They come on when the power goes out. And kind of that sometimes can be your first indication that there is a power outage, especially when it's at night and you wouldn't have other electronics or something on anyway. And you wake up and maybe like your alarm clock is off. If most people's alarm clock, we just use your phone. That stuff isn't necessarily even plugged into wall power. So that can be your first indication. It's like, oh, this thing is on. And I have one in like every room in the house, so you're never going to be like pitch black, stumbling around. So it's at least from that perspective the best way to have power come on right away. And then they can be pulled out and used for actual flashlights. They're rechargeable, that sort of thing. What's up, NC Douglas? I also like to make sure you guys have at least one or two forms of non-electric light generation. Um, you have your trusty old chem lights are good for emergencies, like immediate emergencies rather, not long-term like power or light production that you would do anything by, but they're good for like marking. And if, like I said, if you're in a situation where like I always carry one or two of these in my backpack, pretty much no matter where I go, even if it's out and about, if I have the backpack or my vehicle with me, there's at least one or two of these. So no matter what type of power outage it was, even if it was like a full-on EMP where everything electronic was fried, you can just grab one of these, crack it, and you'll at least be able to see where you're going inside dark buildings and whatever. Um, and you don't have to worry about like shelf life or batteries running out. So from a storage perspective, they're great for like throwing into bags and kits and things like that. Whereas if you had even things like headlamps and whatever, you occasionally have to check the batteries and make sure that stuff's working, which you should be doing anyway. But I, for a lot of reasons, and there's other reasons you could use these too, and they're perfectly waterproof and all you can use them as markers. There's a lot of reasons why you, and they're not very expensive. So getting a grip, I'll put another link down below too of the pack that I've gotten in the past. A lot of times the time that they claim, like the 8 hours, is a little bit generous. But I mean, you're always going to get a few hours at least out of these. Like even if you don't get the 8 hours that they claim, you're going to get 3 or 4 like really solid hours, and then after that, it's like it's still making light, so they claim it's on. But you get several hours at least of pretty decent light in different colors. Um, and pretty useful for storage. And then you can have things like candles, oil lamps, any of this other non-electric type stuff that is really not as efficient or effective, and there's some risk element involved with anything with open flames, but it's still good to have that around for various reasons. Like I said, if you can't rely on electricity 100%, might be other uses for some of those things too, like the lantern fuel and everything. That stuff stores really well, a lot better than electricity for the most part. Even propane lanterns, things like that. I personally use propane or store my propane more for cooking. I don't really have to worry about heating out here. The winters we get are not like dangerously cold to where I would need to like cannibalize my propane for heating. Usually, that would have to be a pretty extreme winter. It's just rare that it even gets below freezing for any significant period of time. So I save my propane for cooking, but you can use propane as well for that. The propane light is very like bright and even compared to like a flame, which is not that powerful of a light and it flickers and everything. Yeah, torches definitely give you aura boost for a post wasteland. You're walking around with like a actual torch. It's pretty badass. Whereas the lantern doesn't quite do that. Oil lanterns have pretty good aura too, make you feel like you're out on the moors hunting werewolves. But again, they're not that bright. They can be smelly. They are potentially a lot more dangerous. If you're to easily knock it over or something like that. But they are really cool. I've always liked the vibes from open flames, whether that's candles or lanterns. But it's really easy to have a grip of like cheap LED flashlights. Headlamps, I think, are even more important most of the time because you can use a headlamp like a flashlight, but not vice versa. You can just hold a headlamp if you need to, um, but it's hard to put a flashlight, like what you can put it in your mouth when you need your hand. So the headlamps are super important, and then keeping enough batteries on hand for them, and then the reuse. Like I've showed you guys the Power Owl batteries. That's what I use for this thing. Um, the recharger, and they're in there right now, and I just recharge them every once in a while. They don't last quite as long as a regular battery, but in terms of each individual use, but it's comparable. It's just not quite as good. And then the rechargeability obviously is huge, especially if you're talking about a preparedness situation. And if you combine that with, obviously you have to combine it with some sort of power generation, even as simple as a small solar panel, one of these like power generation with boxes, which I have, or certainly a gas generator or anything like that. That's the next step is power generation. But even up to that point, you can have a pretty small operation as far as electrical generation stuff. You get power station with a couple solar panels, rechargeable battery pack, a bunch of LED flashlights and headlamps, and then one or two backups that are non-electric, just totally disconnected from your electric power generation system, just in case. And you will have at least that portion of lighting taken care of for, I mean, that's years. You could be, if you have one of those power generation stations like that, LED lights use so little power that even just basic batteries like a headlamp with the lights on can last for days sometimes. So I definitely, and that stuff is not expensive these days, with the exception of the actual power station, the solar panels itself. But with the future that we're facing right now, I really think it's a worthy purchase. Um, that we should all have, especially with what we're seeing like right now with this San Francisco power outage, and that's going to continue to get worse. Just as the country slips into the enshittification, as we more and more kind of approximate a second world country going forward, these things are going to happen more often, and that doesn't even include if we have any sort of active event like a cyber attack or terrorist attack or anything that knocks out power like that. And even certainly we've seen weather events happen where like snowstorms and hurricanes and everything knock out power for long periods of time. And the worse off the country is economically and socially and everything in general, even those natural events are going to be a lot more problematic and last longer. I remember when I was going to school at University of Florida in Gainesville, there was one of the hurricanes that knocked out power to the apartment complex I was in for like 10 days. And now the whole city wasn't out for 10 days, which was really actually worse because they started classes back up and I still didn't have power at our apartment, like this entire part of the city. But most of the city still did. So imagine if um, the country and the local government and the infrastructure and stuff is already struggling, and then you have a big blizzard or a snowstorm or some kind of minor terror attack or something, infrastructure attack or something like that, then the stuff is just going to be worse and worse. And that's one of the most kind of obvious things that we're going to have to face is lack of grid power in all sorts of disaster scenarios. So it's one that I think we definitely should have. I think that's more likely even than like a long-term food problem because food you can go without or just a little bit of food that you have in your house that most people have in their houses or whatever, a week or two, most of us even wouldn't die. Even I wouldn't die. I'm not too overweight. I'm actually too skinny right now, but I'm not going to die in a week, even if I had zero food. Most or many Americans certainly could go a month or two with zero food. And now if you have a little bit of food, it doesn't take much to have, you got one bag of rice, some cans of stag chili, cans of Spam. You already got a few months worth of food. That's easy to take care of. Um, Power outages could become a major problem for people much quicker than food outages. The food outages are more serious in the long term. Like if you don't have any power and you avoided the major issues with that, then long term, it doesn't really get any worse. Whereas if you run out of food, it continues to get worse and worse until you die. But like as far as society and everything, if a lot of people don't have power, like if power goes out in your city, um, it's going to get ugly fast. And the more people available, or the more people present who have resources available, the less severe that will be. Even if that's as simple as flashlights, um, headlamps, oil lamps, a few batteries. So if you have because I mean that's the best way to think of preparedness is what are you gonna do for a major long-term power outage? And then beyond that, you can get into the crazy stuff like, if people were to attack you or, nuclear events or crazy stuff like that. But basically it all comes down to what would you do if the power goes out for 2 months? You know what I mean? Can't go to the store, can't go to the gas station, can't go to do, all this stuff. What are you gonna do? And just go down the list. And the power generation for light and small appliances like that is pretty easy to take care of. I mean, you can really square yourself away in that regard for well under $1,000. And I think that, um, and if you really want to get a good setup, maybe it'd be like in the $1,500 to $2,000 range. If you want to talk about like solar panels, a battery pack, and all the little flashlights and headlamps and everything, but well worth it if you can scrape that together, I think, because of the kind of situations that we'll be facing in the future. And it's such a huge like load off to know that like if the power goes out, I know I'll be able to at least have light, run small appliances. What's up, HCP? Um, and all, see what I'm doing. And don't forget for things like your optics, if you need batteries for them, all the little things that use power that you don't think about. Now, the good thing is a lot of stuff nowadays is has built-in batteries that you can just recharge directly. So, like I mentioned before, how you can get these rechargeable AA and AAA. I have these Power Owl ones that have been working well for me. There's a lot of different brands out there, but these are relatively cheap and have seem to be getting good cycles out of them. Um, but a lot of stuff has built-in batteries too that you can just need a source to recharge it. So if you have your power station, you can recharge that stuff, the optics, the even small tools. You even need random stuff like coffee makers and things like that. Um, and you will be in a good shape, especially if you have any sort of, I can't really think of too many medical devices that you would need power for other than like a CPAP machine or maybe some kind of like a nebulizer if you have to take like medicine for respiratory problems or If you have like an oxygen tank or something, you don't really need power. You need just continue access to that. But anything like that, you still would be able to run off of power as well. But the one that I have, you can even run things like microwave if you want, coffee maker, power tools, like pretty heavy duty stuff, for at least brief periods of time. Refrigerator, that's a big one. If you can get up to the level, that's the big jump, is if you can get your power generation up to keep a chest freezer or a small refrigerator running, then you can salvage a lot of food that you have, things like that. Headlamps are definitely valuable. Yeah, I do have like a kind of retarded amount of like floating around. They're so cheap now, and even the cheap ones, like it's good to have some really legit one or two at least to have in like in your kit for your camping and like the stuff that you'd actually take with you. But the cheaper ones work pretty well for short periods of time. They just tend to be like kind of clunky. They're not as quite as efficient with the power. They don't have as many options. But I mean, it just definitely does not hurt to have like a box of or the two of them sitting around to be able to hand out to people because it's so much better to be able to actually do anything with a headlamp on than with trying to use a flashlight. But ideally, you would have actual like lamps of some kind, lights that you can hang up and but you can hang. I've done that before in hurricanes where you just take the headlamp and hang it up. But I have some of those camping lanterns too that are a little bit better at diffusing the light, things like that. A couple of those too, also rechargeable, are a huge deal. And then you just have to have some manner of cooking. If you have a really good power generation setup, like I said, you can run microwaves, electric hot plates off of that. It takes a lot of power, but if you are comfortable with the amount that you're generating from either solar or whatever else, that's not a big deal. I would always also have some kind of non-electric backup, probably more than one. For me, it's not even a backup, but the electric cooking is more of a backup alternate. For me, my primary cooking right now is propane and sun oven. Out here, sun oven you can use for a lot, um, because we get so many days of sun, but also you have to do it outside, takes quite a bit of time. The propane is very, very useful. I have the grill and a couple small burners, which is they're pretty efficient. Um, if it was something as far as just water, I'd probably heat that up in the sun oven. But um, the propane, I have multiple cans stored, so months worth of at least one or two meals a day cooking with propane. And if you have that squared away, combined with all your um, like toiletries, just having enough of them, and you probably don't need quite as much as you think when it comes to that sort of stuff. Some things like toilet paper and everything, like I mean, some people seem to go through like insane amounts of toilet paper. I don't even know what they're doing in there, but in an emergency, hopefully most of you could make like a roll last a week or something. But you don't really need too much. Like a tube of toothpaste, you can make last a year if you need to, if you just use a little bit of it. Most of the benefit of brushing is mechanical anyway, meaning it's the actual process of like scrubbing that is what's benefiting you, not the chemicals in the toothpaste, which are probably bad for you most of the time anyway. Fluoride and whatnot. Don't worry, I have some crunchy non-fluoride, what is it, hexapaptite instead shampoo or shampoo, toothpaste. But like the point is you can use like a one tube of toothpaste for your entire 6 months to a year if you need to be. Same with like soap and body wash. We probably use a lot more stuff than we really need to. So you really don't have to have too much of that on hand to last you quite a bit of time. Um, and then if you just think of a few things that you need to be able to do without power, like washing clothes, but even then, most of that stuff you can improvise with like if you have a tote and some sort of like way to plunge it and whatever. If you're just, not if you're not having to do it too much crazy work outside, then your clothes isn't going to be really all that dirty. You just need to get the, smell and bacteria out of it. And if it is dirty, then this might be a little dirtier. But the point being, you don't really need too much to get through, if you think about like I said, a 3 month power outage. Now, obviously, if there were really a 3 month power outage, there'd be some probably gnarly situations outside of your house or property that could bleed in and affect you. But in terms of what you actually need resource wise, that's basically the same situation. 3 month power outage. You wouldn't, then we can worry about marauders and people trying to steal your stuff and preparing for that. But as far as what you need on a day-to-day basis, if you think of it like a long power outage or an extended camping trip, what you do day in and day out, that's pretty much all you would need. Washboards are cheap. Yeah. Like you, and you can use some things to improvise that if you needed to. All my stuff runs 18650 rechargeables. Awesome. Lasts forever. Easy to pack, easy to charge. Correct. Stack butter and store-bought jerky. Yeah, they even make a canned butter. And you can freeze butter as well, but they also have some like canned butter. And that probably stores better than like oil, like olive oil, things like that. But I wouldn't forget the rice. Just also stack butter and store-bought. The problem with the store-bought jerky is that it's t full of sugar. And I mean, in emergency, that doesn't really matter, but it means you're just paying for like a bunch of sugar and it's very expensive. It's probably cheaper to make your own jerky or buy or freeze-dried food is even better if you can get it or freeze-dry your own. Mr. Landfill, I have says I have several hundred battery packs with them. Nice. After 3 months, you'll be stacking bodies. Somebody will be. Hopefully, that will be happening outside your house or property if you have your preparations. But yeah, obviously, if there were actually a power outage that lasted 3 months, there would be a lot of people in really rough shape. Thank you, B Hill, for the $5 super chat. Says there are TP medallions that you moisten, they become emergency TP. Happy holidays, Brian Hickenbottom. Appreciate it, sir. Um, Great to see you back. Yeah, there's a couple different names that I've seen those go by, and they're little pellets of like super compressed, kind of like towel, toilet paper thing that if you just get like one or two drops of water on them or just a little bit of water, they'll reopen back up into like many times their size, so you can actually have like a really condensed um, wipes or toilet paper, taking up a lot less space than they normally would. And I'll probably end up getting some of those. I have actually right over here about to make a video on it on my like poop apocalypse bucket, which is basically the a bucket tote that I've prepackaged with all the stuff you would need to deal with a like toiletries, but mostly going to the bathroom, the bucket seat, the toilet seat on the bucket, the bags, that sort of stuff, and some other um general toiletries that they have in there. But it's all the normal stuff, with the exception of, like I said, anything crazy like nuclear, biological, or self-defense. We won't probably get into that today because that's an ever-present risk. But virgin coconut oil will last indefinitely. Does it? I don't know if it'll last indefinitely. It definitely lasts a long time, but I'm almost certain that coconut oil can go rancid if it's like stored not at the right temperature and whatnot, at least. But almost all fats will go rancid eventually. You can't just have fats and oils sit there on the shelf at room temperature forever without them going rancid. But it does last a while. Butter is the gold standard, rice and butter when it's time to fight. Yeah, I mean, butter helps with cooking a lot of stuff, helps it not stick to the pan, obviously makes it more delicious, adds a bunch of fats and calories, but it is hard to store because it's typically stored in the like a refrigerator. But you can freeze it and you can buy canned butter. Or if you get like a ghee, like a rendered butter, that has like a very long, almost indefinite shelf life. If you have like the rendered fats, um, I haven't eaten with that yet, so I'm not sure how that the taste really compares to like just regular butter, but that is definitely an option. Get some ghee. It's used in a lot of like Eastern food and Indian food and stuff like that, and you can get like jars of it, and that should last a long time. You can keep your bacon grease, yeah. Um, Yeah, just about to ask about ghee. Yeah, ghee has a much longer shelf life. I don't have a lot of personal or any personal experience with using it for cooking and everything, but I just do know about that. Pet neighbors are a food resource. Yeah, just ask Alex Jones, where he was like, "I will eat your ass." That's hilarious. But you don't want to. I don't want the gross meat from the people. American. They don't seem healthy or tasty. How do you make ghee? Do you have to be Indian? Don't think you have to be. Um, they probably know a little bit more about it than I do. But from what I understand, it's just butter rendered down, like boiled down, basically, probably multiple times. Let's look it up. Let's see if the robot knows what we're talking about here. We'll ask the Grok. It gets shit wrong all the time, but it can find some stuff pretty quick. Boil the butter. Yeah, yeah. I knew you boiled it down, but I didn't know the exact process. It says the most authentic way, often considered superior for flavor and nutrition, starts from milk from indigenous cows. Milk the cows, boil the fresh milk to pasteurize it naturally, then cool it, culture it into curd, yogurt, churn the curd, heat the butter. So you basically make butter the normal way by churning it into a separate the butter from the buttermilk. This yields cultured butter. Then you heat the butter. You slowly simmer the fresh butter in a pot over low heat until the water evaporates. Milk solids separate and lightly brown at the bottom, and a nutty aroma develops. Then you filter the golden liquid through a cheesecloth or a fine strainer to remove the browned solids. This labor-intensive process preserves more nutrients and creates a deeply aromatic ghee. So yeah, it's just rendered, boiled down. Doesn't seem too complicated. Yeah, purified butter. Have you looked into oil storage? I have not really. What are the options for oil beyond like something like ghee or like I said, I know you can can fats also, like canned butter, canned meats, things like that. But as far as oil specifically, the I know a lot of the like so-called seed oils, which I try to avoid because they're like processed garbage in my opinion, have a much longer shelf life than anything like olive oil or coconut oil. Because I know that in of itself, like if you get regular coconut oil, regular olive oil, it does not last indefinitely on the shelf and it can turn rancid. So I don't typically store that. If I had the opportunity last minute to go to the store or like ransack something when I knew we were facing some kind of SHTF scenario, I would grab a bunch of um, oil. But as of right now, for any long-term storage, I would be relying on more like butter and fat and things like that. Oh, crude oil. $56 can't hold much longer. Crack up boom coming. Yeah, it certainly seems like it. I feel like we're gonna see more of a push in terms of inflation. They're already lowering rates again. We're talking about, well, they already just did, and they're gonna probably continue to do it. So we'll probably see a mini, not even mini, a continued run up until something cracks. But it's getting harder and harder to try and figure out what that might be. Or and like I've always said, it's entirely possible we never get an actual like crash, that we just get a continued ongoing melt up even just from here. I still don't think that's most likely. I think there's a reason why every time throughout history, even in America and other countries, these markets always kind of eventually have that moment of like panic. Um, and we'll have at least a brief crash and kind of like bubble popping, and then that kind of panic while people look for where to put the money, and then the insane money printing, because they're not even really doing the really crazy direct monetization money printing that we would expect to see in a true kind of melt up. It's just kind of chugging along. But with all the talks of like these extra payments to the military and stipends, and um, Elon Musk keeps talking about everyone getting UBI, and like they're just itching for ways to create more money to try and pull us out of this. But they haven't really started going insane yet. I mean, it's insane what they're doing already, but it's nothing different than like the last few years. Nothing that would cause like what I consider to be like a hyperinflationary. B. Hill says watching early American doing cooking is a great motivator and teacher for how to live without modern convenience. Yeah, there's actually a couple channels I've seen on here that are really kind of good from like a relaxing ASMR effect too. It's like where they go through the process of like cooking in the way exactly in the way that they would in these various eras, and they even use the recipes and stuff like that. It's pretty wild to watch um, them use exactly like the same type of cookware and the same type of ingredients, the same kind of recipes, and only using the technology that they would back then. And they'll break it out by like whatever era it was to, like 1700s, 1800s, and using the different tools. And it's really interesting and shows you just how you can still do stuff even without all the technology that we have. But when it comes down to it, at least as far as cooking, And especially as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing that I do that uses a lot of technology when it comes to cooking. Um, I am very simple when it comes to what I eat, so I don't need anything pretty much beyond like obviously microwave and stuff for convenience, but there's nothing that a microwave does that any other heating source can't really do. This might take a little longer. Fantana Naranja says oil is going to be super cheap and unavailable. Super cheap and unavailable? We don't live in a free market. That would be an interesting comment. I mean, yeah, we don't live in a truly free market, but there's still the markets are still there regardless. And there's worldwide market for things like oil. So I don't see how oil could remain cheap and unavailable. That doesn't really make sense. Not on a global scale anyway. Um, but who knows what kind of weirdness we're going to see over the next few months. All I know is I'm going to still continue to try to get more of this. Even the sound is good. And I also think that we are in a what will later seem as a golden era for stocking up on weapons and ammunition and stuff like that too. We kind of that's not really something that comes up as a topic anymore because it hasn't been too egregious for a couple years now. But or at least a year or whatever, and the prospects are good for the next year or two or three as far as this administration for at least nothing getting worse. But yeah, I mean, like prices are actually not that bad for ammo compared to how they have been for the, at various points over the past 5, 10 years, with COVID and with other administrations. So while it doesn't feel urgent now to get ammo and whatever weaponry, I think that's exactly why it's probably the perfect time to stock up on it. Um, because it is cheap and because there isn't crippling demand, is widely, readily available for anything you could possibly get at not too crazy prices. Like that thing I posted the other day. Now, those magazines are probably crap. I'm going to try it out. They were, for those of you who don't know, I posted on the, just like the community page or whatever it is. It was a PSA, not PSA brand, but they were selling a 60 round magazine for $10. So this is an actual high capacity magazine. 30 rounds in high capacity, that's standard capacity. But they might not be any good, but I picked up a handful of them to give it a shot because if they are decent, even 60 round magazines for $10 is pretty legit. And the prices you can get for like 9 millimeter and 5.56 and pretty much anything right now is I really don't think we're going to get ever have anything better for the rest of my life. Let's put it that way, which puts it into perspective when you put it that way. Like this may be the best point that I ever have for the rest of my life to buy guns and ammunition. So it's like, as much as I really want to pour money into this too, don't neglect like I said, probably the best possible opportunity that we'll ever have again for weapons and ammo. Now, I am personally of the opinion that people probably buy too many weapons and not enough ammo. There's really not that many different weapons that an individual needs. It's cool and obviously fun. I love guns as much as anybody. I would love to have all of them. But when it comes down to what you really need, especially for like any sort of SHTF scenario or preparedness purposes, it makes a lot more sense to have a few different options and then just have multiples of them. So you have like ammunition that you can share, magazines that you can share, parts and repairs and all that stuff that you can share. So like there's not the different categories that I would kind of focus on would be like your concealed carry pistols, your full size pistols, some kind of battle rifle, whether that's an AR-15 variant or some kind of AK, possibly a couple long range or hunting rifles in like 308 or something like that, and maybe shotgun. But then like when it comes to each of those, I think rather than having like five different ones, it would actually be better from a preparedness perspective to have like five of the same thing or almost the same thing. Like they don't have to be exactly the same, but if you had like five AR-15s that would probably be better than like an AR-15, something else, and like all these different things. If you have, they could have different barrel lengths and whatnot, but and maybe different optics on them and whatever. But the more similar they are, sharing magazines, sharing a lot of the same parts, sharing the ammo, from a preparedness perspective, that's a lot more useful than having like a bunch of different stuff. And the absolutely same goes for pistols, rather than having Like I do have pistols and I try to cover pretty much every common caliber just in case. But like my system is based on having like my 43X is my concealed carry, some kind of like Glock, larger full size Glock for, or at least 19X or Glock 19, something like that for what would be like your open carry pistol in this scenario where I'd be having it in like a hip holster rather than like an appendix carry. And then you just have a bunch of magazines, a bunch of ammo that are and like five of the same things, I think would actually be the most useful. It's not as fun. It's obviously more fun to buy all different kinds of guns and try them out and have so many options. But from purely preparedness perspective, I think it'd be better to treat it like you have a garrison of soldiers or something. You know what I mean? Even if it is just you with multiple backups. And then you could have all the same holsters. You can, if you need to outfit multiple people, it all works. You have cross compatibility, all that sort of stuff. But I think regardless of what you choose to do and what you choose to get, I do think that we're in like I said, the best time for the rest of our lives to get guns and ammo, unfortunately, probably. All right, so Litzy says check out unrefined coconut oil. Okay, I will check it out. Watch yeah, we watch that. Mr. Landfill says junk silver selling for 40 to 50 times face value on eBay. Yeah, it's wild. Like the price has gone up so far, so fast that I've like lost like I don't have that instinctual sense for even how much they're worth anymore. Like I saw somebody post on Facebook like a handful of like silver dimes and they're like, this I want this much for it. And I was like, "Pfft." I was like, what the? These people are crazy. And then like add it up. I'm like, oh, actually, crap. That's about what it's worth right now. Because it was like, five, like three or four, like $4 or $5 in face value, and they were like they wanted like $250, and I was like, what? Then I'm like, oh, wait a second, 7.715 ish ounces per dollar times $60, almost $70 an ounce. I'm like, well, damn, that's about where we're at right now. Pretty wild, pretty wild. Uh, Catches cutthroats is restoring a Winchester 10 gauge for no reason whatsoever. Because why? Because it's there. CLM says, I'm counting on battlefield pickups in SHTF, starting with nunchucks and working my way up. Yeah, yeah, you can do that. New Year's, Chinese New Year, 4th of July is going to be fun. A couple Barretts. I would love to have a Barrett. That's still on my all-time wish list. Barrett 50 cal. One day, one day I'll get my super long distance and anti-materiel rifle. But in the meantime, we're going to focus on the basics, the financial preparedness, gold and silver. Forged in the heart of dying stars. You know the drill. Probably the most useful metal that exists. It's got the universal standard for conductivity, so it's needed drastically in all sorts of electronic devices. Then we have gold, which is served as currency and medium exchange for pretty much all of modern human history. And I'm going to focus on the lights, the food, the medicine. Don't forget your antibiotics and your toiletries and all that good stuff. Do you still use solar ovens? I definitely have one. I don't use it regularly, but I have used it. I've used it many times, and I will continue to. So yeah, for sure, that's a big part of my ongoing preparedness plan is the ability to use solar oven out here, not just for cooking, but for water pasteurization as well. Um, HGP said, I'd be most happy to get a loot drop of a 338 Lupua. Yeah, I've always wanted one of those too. Then Barrett makes some of those as well, but there's some other like cool Swedish companies and stuff. What's that really nice one? It's like Hiska or something. That has a really great, is it Hiska? There's a really cool like Swedish or Finnish company. Really nice um, rifles chambered and stuff like that. That I would love to have one of these days. Silver is one of the best medicines as well, naturally occurring antibiotic. Yeah, it has antimicrobial. It's not really antibiotic, but it has antimicrobial properties. It's pretty wild. That's why they weave it into the fabric of like some types of clothing, which makes it like anti uh stinky. You don't get stinky because the bacteria doesn't grow on it. Pretty wild. Is it the Sacco? Is that what I'm thinking of? There's a couple of them. But Yeah, obviously I would love to have a bajillion guns. But like I said, from a preparedness perspective, it probably makes more sense to have multiples of each and backups and parts and a bunch of ammo. And that's what I think we should be focusing on for the next. I'm going to try to make sure I continue to have regular ammo purchases as often as I do gold and silver purchases. But as of right now, the gold and silver is well outpacing the price of ammo. So still might make sense, but we never know when ammo when that can change as far as ammo goes. Especially if we see things um get worse with international conflict, then that can put a real hurting on the demand for and supply for ammunition itself and all the components that are needed for it. I like the Lapua, but ammo logistics is a problem. Yeah, it's very not nearly as common. Use an instant pot pressure cooker powered by a large solar generator for cooking rice and beans. Yeah, you can do that for sure. Yeah, that'd be one way to do it. I'm gonna go ahead and call it a night, guys. Probably. I appreciate you guys watching. Remember that for I'm gonna be doing a prediction video, probably not live stream though. Um, at some point I'll do my own predictions, and then very near the end we'll go through all the predictions that everyone else made for the year and show what is wrong and what is right. And then at the first live stream of next year, we'll be giving away this mossy oak knife. It's got a pretty cool shape to it, really beefy, very heavy, but feels solid. Brand new with a Kydex sheath and at least one of these fire blankets as well. Those are very useful. So I appreciate you guys watching, everybody. I probably will not be on here again before Christmas, so I hope you guys all have a Merry Christmas and get to hang out with your family and yeah, just keep on rocking in